Have you ever found yourself thinking, if they love me, why don't they show it? Maybe you're in a relationship or just got out of one with someone who seems distant. They don't say I love you easily. They don't open up the way you do. And when things get close, they pull away. It hurts, and you start to wonder, are they emotionally unavailable? Or do they love me in a way I just don't recognize I'm Jim Rohn? And in today's video, I'm going to help you decode the quiet, easily misread signs that someone with an avoidant attachment style is actually in love with you. Because when it comes to avoidance, love doesn't always look like what we've been taught. It's not the big declarations, it's not the intense passion, and it's definitely not the vulnerability we usually expect. But that doesn't mean it's not real. We're going to talk about why avoidants often pull away just when things feel good, why emotional closeness triggers old fears for them, and how they show love not through words but through consistent, subtle actions that are easy to miss if you're not looking for the right things. This isn't about lowering your standards or settling for less. It's about understanding what real love looks like through an avoidant lens, so you can stop feeling confused, start seeing clearly, and decide what's right for you with compassion and strength. If you've ever felt like you're speaking different emotional languages with your partner, this video is for you. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stay with me until the end. And let's talk about what it really means when an avoidant starts acting differently, because it just might mean they love you. Let's dive in. When you're in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, it's easy to miss the signs that they actually care deeply. Why? Because avoidants love differently. They don't show it with emotional outpourings or big romantic gestures. You're probably not going to hear a dramatic, "I love you," shouted across a parking lot, or have deep, late-night talks about feelings that end in tearful closeness. That's just not their language. Instead, they speak through action. Quiet, practical, often subtle action. An avoidant may not be able to say, "I need you" or "I miss you," but they might bring you your favorite coffee without asking. They might check your tire pressure before a road trip, fix something in your home you didn't even mention, or remember how you take your tea and have it waiting for you. These things may seem small on the surface, but for them this is intimacy. This is love, being expressed in a way that doesn't make them feel emotionally exposed. Why don't they just say what they feel? It all goes back to how avoidants experience emotional intimacy. For many of them, being vulnerable isn't just hard, it's threatening. Early in life, they may have learned that emotional expression led to rejection, shame, or being overwhelmed by the emotions of others. So they built walls, strong ones, and those walls aren't designed to keep you out of their life. They're there to keep them safe inside. So what happens when things are going really well in the relationship? You'd think they'd open up more, right? But with avoidance, the opposite often happens. When closeness increases, so does their internal fear. The deeper they care, the more they feel exposed. And suddenly what felt like connection starts to feel like danger. So they pull back, they go quiet. Not because they don't love you, but because they do, and they're overwhelmed by what that means. Let's say you're planning a weekend together. Everything's going great, you're feeling close, you've had a few meaningful conversations, and then out of nowhere they go cold. Maybe they cancel, maybe they stop texting. You're left wondering, what just happened? What you're witnessing is their nervous system saying, "This feels too vulnerable. I need space to feel safe again." They're not punishing you, they're trying to regulate themselves. Understanding this can help you stop taking their retreat personally. It's not a rejection of you, it's their way of staying emotionally functional in a situation that feels overwhelming. Of course, that doesn't mean you should accept constant distance without your needs being met. but it does mean you can start to see the difference between lack of care and lack of emotional capacity. When an avoidant starts doing these quiet things, remembering details, offering practical help, staying consistently present in small ways, it might not look like the kind of love you're used to, but it's real, it's meaningful, and most importantly, it's how they're trying in the only way they know how. One of the hardest things about loving someone with an avoidant attachment style is how often their love gets misread. If you're someone with more anxious tendencies, or even just a secure person who values open communication and emotional closeness, it's easy to interpret their withdrawal as disinterest. You might think if they cared, they'd say it. If they loved me, they wouldn't pull away. And that's a completely understandable reaction. Because for most people, pulling away during closeness does look like rejection. But for avoidance, it's not that simple. Avoidants often withdraw not because they don't care, but because they care too much and feel overwhelmed by what that means. Their nervous system is wired to handle connection in small doses. The closer things get, the more vulnerable they feel, and that vulnerability can trigger old wounds. So instead of leaning into that discomfort and talking about it, their instinct is to create space. And for them, that space isn't a punishment. It's self-regulation. It's how they try to calm their emotional system down without falling apart. Let's say you've just had a really meaningful weekend with your avoidant partner. You felt close, emotionally connected, like you were both finally getting it. Then, a few days later, they stop texting as much. They seem off. You go from feeling seen and safe to questioning everything. Did I say too much? Were we moving too fast? Are they losing interest? That emotional whiplash is incredibly painful, especially if your attachment style craves consistency and reassurance. But from the avoidance side, what's happening is internal chaos. That weekend triggered their feelings, their fears, and all the emotional content they've been trained to manage privately, not relationally. What's important to understand is this avoidance don't always know how to talk through what they feel. It's not natural for them to say, "Hey, I'm feeling close to you and it's scaring me a little, so I need a moment to breathe." That level of transparency is something most of them haven't been taught or don't yet feel safe expressing. So instead, they create distance. It may look cold, but in many cases, it's their way of protecting both themselves and the relationship from becoming too much too fast. And here's where miscommunication can create major issues. Because while they're pulling away to regulate, you might be leaning in harder, texting more, asking questions, seeking closeness to soothe your anxiety. And the more you lean in, the more they lean out. It's not because they don't love you. It's because your pursuit feels like pressure to someone whose wiring interprets emotional demand as danger. Now, this doesn't mean you should tiptoe or ignore your needs, but it does mean that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is give space without panic. That space isn't a punishment. It's a pause. And if they care about you, they'll come back when their nervous system settles. They're not shutting you out to hurt you. They're trying to stay in the relationship the only way they know how. And the irony, sometimes the space you give them becomes the very thing that helps them feel safe enough to come closer again. Let's talk about how avoidants really say "I love you," because if you're looking for it in the usual places, verbal affirmations, dramatic gestures, deep emotional talks, you might miss it entirely. Avoidants speak love in a quieter language. For them, expressing affection doesn't come through fireworks or long love letters. It comes through consistency, through reliability, through the small, subtle ways they show up in your life over and over again. It's love by presence, not performance. Maybe they don't say "I miss you," but they always message you at the same time every morning. Maybe they don't gush about how proud they are of you, but they remember that important meeting you had and ask how it went. Maybe they don't initiate deep talks about feelings, but they fix your broken cabinet offer to drive you to the airport or bring home your favorite snack after a long day. To someone with a more emotionally expressive attachment style, these things might seem ordinary or even underwhelming. But to an avoidant, these are acts of emotional risk. These are their ways of letting you in. Avoidants rely on habit and routine to feel safe in relationships. Their love grows slowly, quietly, and it tends to live in the small gestures. Emotional evolution doesn't happen in big declarations. It happens in the fact that they keep showing up, that they're still calling, that they're still there, even if they're not saying everything you want to hear. Take this example: you've been dating someone avoidant for a few months. You're not sure how they feel because they're not very verbal. But you realize they've made space for you in their routine. They text you when they wake up, remember your work schedule, and make time to see you every week sometimes, even when they're overwhelmed or tired. That's not random. That's love filtered through caution. And the fact that they're showing up consistently is their way of trusting you more than they're comfortable admitting. One mistake people often make is assuming that if love isn't loud, it's not real. But love doesn't always need to announce itself. Especially for someone who's wired to be emotionally guarded, love is often expressed in the ways they help support and make your life easier without needing attention or praise in return. That kind of love doesn't shout, it whispers. The key here is not to settle for emotional crumbs, but to recognize effort where it genuinely exists. If someone avoids emotional intensity but consistently shows up in small ways, they may be telling you they care in the safest way they know how. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they feel deeply, and they're scared to show it until it's safe. And sometimes the strongest love isn't the one that's declared, it's the one that's proven little by little in the quiet moments. Watch those, because that's where avoidants speak their truth. Now here's something really important to understand. When an avoidant truly loves someone, they begin to grow. It doesn't usually happen all at once, and it rarely looks polished or perfect. But if you watch closely, you'll start to see the signs. Maybe they retreat a little less often. Maybe they open up just a little sooner after conflict. Maybe they start checking in with you emotionally, even if it feels awkward or new for them. These moments might seem small, but they are huge milestones for someone who has spent most of their life believing emotional closeness isn't safe. Let's say your avoidant partner used to disappear for days after arguments, leaving you in the dark. But now, after a disagreement, they still ask for space. But they tell you that they need it. That's growth. Or maybe they never liked talking about feelings, but out of nowhere one evening they tell you, "I'm not great at this, but I care about you." It might not sound like much, but for them that's vulnerability in motion. That's love evolving one step at a time. Avoidants don't transform overnight, but when they feel emotionally safe with you and when they're doing their own internal work, they do begin to shift. And while you should never wait around hoping someone will change, it's okay to notice real progress and acknowledge it. Healing for avoidance happens slowly and usually in silence. But their small acts of inclusion, their efforts to stay, to communicate better, to show up when it's hard, are signs that love is not just present, but growing. So if you see these changes, no matter how quiet or imperfect they are, know this. You're not imagining things. You're witnessing transformation. The slow, steady unfolding of someone learning how to love you and let themselves be loved back. So, Let's bring this all together because today's message is one that so many people need to hear. Avoidants don't love less. They just love differently. They rarely express their care through grand emotional declarations or public displays of vulnerability. Instead, they show love through quiet, consistent actions, the kind that can easily be overlooked if you're expecting something louder or more obvious. We explored why emotional closeness feels risky for avoidants, how their early experiences shaped their protective behaviors, and how their moments of withdrawal are often less about you and more about them trying to self-regulate. We also talked about how real growth happens, not through big dramatic breakthroughs, but through small, meaningful shifts, fewer retreats, more moments of presence and quiet efforts to stay connected, even when it's hard. The key takeaway here is, this avoidant behaviors are not emotional failures, they're survival strategies. And while that doesn't excuse poor communication or consistent emotional distance, it helps us understand the why behind the behavior. With that understanding, we can approach these relationships with more clarity and compassion without losing ourselves in the process. So if you've ever felt invisible or unloved because your partner didn't show affection the way you expected, this video hopefully gave you a new lens to stop listening for love only in volume and to start noticing it in quiet consistency. That's where avoidants speak their truth. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If it gave you clarity or comfort, please take a second to hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part resonated most with you? What patterns have you seen in your own experience? This channel is all about helping you build insight, emotional strength, and secure, healthy love. So stay with me and let's keep growing together. Until next time, take care of your heart. You deserve connection that feels safe, steady, and real.